Good to have you all here, 3 and Out on this Thursday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you're making us a part of your day. A lot to get to here on the program. We're talking some ATL sports. Braves get ready to start the season next week. Hawks winding down. The season could actually eliminate the Knicks if they win tonight. And we'll talk to Chase Earl about that. Sports Talk ATL in hour number 1. Scott Carter, FloridaGators.com, going to join us. We'll look at spring practice there in Gainesville. Also, Michael Rodak, AL.com. We'll talk about Alabama spring practice and the Crimson Tide's Pro Day. And interesting thought there as well when you potentially think about who the Jags could draft. Would you just go ahead and get the tackle and figure it out? Because everybody says dude is going to be amazing. John Lastinger, former SEC champion quarterback at Georgia, going to join us coming up in the final hour. We'll hear from Brian Ellis, Georgia Southern offensive coordinator, coming up in the final hour of the program as well. But we are 1 week away from opening day in Major League Baseball. BJ and Ben, and the Braves have named Max Fried their opening day starter next Thursday night.
We made it, Kevin. I mean, Kevin, well, they made us sweat it out, right? I know it's all about the start of the season, but this was a season that almost wasn't, because we had to, the players, one, flex their muscle. The owners bent a little bit. They was able to get it done in the 5 o'clock hour. And Kevin, dare I say, been a long time, so you could say the defending World Series champion Braves, Max Fried. I mean, if you would have told me in 2022 who was going to be the opening day starter, I would have been like, I don't know, is his last name Tehran? I mean, how many opening days did he start? About 7?
A lot, yeah.
I mean, Mike Fotanavich, right? Mike Soroka. Max Fried is done to the hard way. Look, just went about his business. It was it was crowded when he first started, with the Braves. But look, he's a guy that I think is really, 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 really good. I think when you think about the pitchers in this division, listen, let me say this. Let me go ahead. He's not Scherzer. He's not DeGrom. Well, who is? Like, nobody's those guys. I get that part. But when you think about what Max Fried is, listen, opening day means that this is going to be this. Usually, if you're the opening day guy, if they go to the playoffs, that's your opening day starter in the playoffs, in the World Series. And Max Fried has lived up to it. My expectation of Max Fried, be yourself, young man. Whatever you've done to get you here, keep doing that. Because second, third, and he's probably going to be playing with a lead. Be comfortable. Command the mound. And he don't need my help. He ain't need my help getting to the majors. He sure as hell ain't needed my help since he's been there. Keep doing what you're doing, sir. I wear these Atlanta Braves hats proudly.
And a fantastic year last year, Kevin, when you look at what he did, 14-7. But I think more importantly, when you look at a pitcher's statistical resume, you go to the ERA, you go to the WHIP, and an ERA of 3.04. I mean, elite, a WHIP of right down near 1.09. I guess when this was announced, was there any consideration, maybe Charlie Morton being the opening day starter?
Yeah, I think there was some, but I mean, look, I think it was one of those throw them in a hat and pick one out. I mean, it really only matters probably for opening day. I mean, if we're being quite honest, the Braves are going to go with a 6-man rotation to start. That throws things off because I know people say, well, you want number 1 versus number 1. Well, that, again, is only guaranteed on opening day and really the first time through the rotation as you're playing. If the Braves go with a 6-man rotation, as they have indicated they're going to, you're going to start lining up your 6 on their 1, your 1. So I think you throw it in a hat and you say, who feels comfortable, Max or Charlie? Max, you want it? All right, that's fine. You have another ace going at number 2. I think it's just one of those things. It's a title. It's a label that we like to put on players in sports. Oh, I'm the number 1 starter, and you're the number 2. No, you're both number 1s, but somebody has to go second, and somebody has to go first. And so I think that's where the Braves are with the way they pitched last year. And you've got another guy that, despite his outing yesterday, could wind up by the time his career is over being a number 1 or number 2 guy in a rotation as well. He happens to be 3rd. In the rotation. So I think from the Braves standpoint, they looked at it and probably, talked to Max and Charlie and said, here's what we're thinking, and went with Max. I don't think it was something that was overly thought out, to put it that way.
Yeah, and I mean, Ben, you mentioned he's not, DeGrom, not Scherzer. I don't know that he's that far off.
No,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the stats and what's Scherzer getting this year contractually.
40?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think Max Fried is a guy that absolutely, Charlie Morton, Ian Anderson, I know he struggled yesterday, but I think these are front end of the rotation guys who they've won a World Series. I mean, they have won, 4 straight division titles. So I think these guys have more than earned the benefit of the doubt. And I think this is one of the best rotations in baseball. I do. I mean, if you're telling me that Waskari Noah is going to be your 4th or 5th starter, I mean, a guy that has had just stretches of dominance and is still a young guy himself to go along with, again, Fried and Morton and Anderson. I think you'll probably see Kyle Wright at the back end, Tucker Davidson maybe, if you go with the 6-man rotation. But I think these guys are about as good as it gets in Major League Baseball, and I think they're a big reason why most people, as we've seen, are picking the Braves to win this division.
I think something that Kevin says can't go understated. When you say they put names in the hat and they pick one out. I think anybody that's coming out there on opening day is going to be celebrated, not just for what they've done the previous year, but by their teammates. I think the one thing that I didn't understand as being a professional athlete is the one thing I need to play is not what I need to be a teammate. Ego and pride is what drove me, but to be a good teammate, man, you need to let that stuff go. I want the team to play well. And to think about, there is nothing like being a starter in baseball because you only get so many opportunities. People go crazy over one bad spell. Oh my God, he's the worst. But it's that slow and steady pace. And I do think that a guy like Max Fried, look, when you think he's the one leading the way. Charlie Morton, Ian Anderson, you talking about Watts Cardinal, you talking about Kyle Wright and all those guys, Tucker Davidson and those guys, he's the one leading the way, and they'll say that. The one thing I do like about spring is what guys say about their teammates, because most of the time, we don't know. And it's not like we live our lives based on how we feel about each other, but it matters. It matters that who you go to work with, and going to work in a sport is different because my livelihood is attached to how he or she plays. So I think that in this situation, if Max Fried wasn't running out there, I would have thought, and Kevin, maybe this is just that BJ coming out of me. I'm thinking, is there something wrong with him? Because there ain't nothing wrong with Max Fried. He need to be running, because you know how it is. What are we, 2 years removed for everybody in the starting rotation have muscle tightness? Everybody, man, they got muscle. I'm like, is there? Yeah, man. Just say they want to play golf. Because I don't want to hear the muscle tightness stuff. Because that's not a timeline on when you come back. But Max Fried, man, been doing it for the last 2 years, man. He's going to hopefully, get back to his winning ways.
Well, I think it's just the evolution of his career. Where he came up, he was the guy with finesse stuff. I think people get fascinated, and I've said this on the show. One of my favorite guys ever was Greg Maddux. Greg Maddux was not throwing 100 miles an hour. He knew where to put it. He could put it where he wanted it, and he was going to get you out. And I think Max Fried is kind of in that same mode. He doesn't have the just blow you away fastball, but he knows how to hit breaking stuff.
The curveball. Yeah.
He knows how to put it in a spot where you're going to get out. And I think sometimes that's a lost art. I was telling somebody the other day, I saw, you can see videos of everything on YouTube and whatever. Somebody did the fastest thrown balls in Major League, a compilation. These are the hardest 25 thrown pitches in Major League Baseball. I think it was in 2020. They were all 100 miles an hour or more, and it took me 15 pitches before a strike was thrown. So, I mean, I think it still comes down to, hey, can you put it over the plate? And if you can and put it where you want over the plate, you're going to be successful. And I think that's Max Fried in a big way.
You're a week away from opening day, as you said, Ben. I mean, there was a time where you thought, are we gonna have this? Mm-hmm. And you're the defending World Series champs. Is there anything that, because Kevin, we were talking about this earlier, Ben, is there anything you need to accomplish the last week of spring training, or is it as simple as stay healthy? I mean, you're the defending champs. I mean, I know when you had preseason games, is that what it comes down to, especially when you're a team this good?
Yes, BJ, because look, I mean, the marathon of 162 starts next Thursday. I mean, what would you rather have? A guy coming out of the spring, lights out, and then he getting the regular spring or anything preseason has no bearing. The only thing you want is health. All I want to know about is 2 guys. Hey, well, I don't want no new guys on the injury report. How was Ron Acuna? How was Mike Soroka? That's it. That's all I want to hear about, because I think the thing is, people are going 162 games, man. It really comes down to the last week. I mean, guys ain't going to be separated by that much. And like I said, this is about, pre-All-Star game, post-All-Star game. But Mike Soroka, Ron Acuna, that's the only 2 I want to hear about. I don't want to hear about nobody else on no freaking injury report.
And again, coming up in a week, Braves and Reds will be back at it. If you're feeling Anthony Matt Olson finally hit a home run today down at spring training.
That's what I was saying about the overreacting to the spring stats. I know Dansby hasn't had a ton of offensive production. You mentioned Ian Anderson had a rough outing yesterday.
And I will say that this is different. I will say that this is different in this respect, where you were talking about Dansby not having a good go of it at spring. Well, most of the time you get a full month. They've condensed this down to about 2-3 weeks. So normally you would say, well, he's kind of struggled. He'd have 3 more weeks to kind of, for whatever it matters, get his spring training batting average up. I only really cared back in the day when it was like the extreme outliers. Like if you hit 600 in spring, okay, you probably see the ball really well. And if you hit like Dan Uggla one year, I think hit like 120 in spring, you're saying this is not a guy that looks to be ready. I think if Dansby had another week or two, the average would probably look different. And, I think Dansby will be fine. He's going to be batting 9th in all likelihood in this lineup to start. So you don't need him to come out there and just blister the ball everywhere. And he's been kind of a slow starter at times. So, look, I think yesterday Ian Anderson gets ripped around. That could be happening. I mean, guys at this stage should be trying to work on their best stuff, but it's been condensed for them as well. I mean, who's to say he's not working on something and just gets ripped all over the yard? I mean, that's happened, before. We've seen Greg Maddux back in the day.
We know what you're good at. Hey, you've been struggling with this. Go out
Greg
and kind of,
Maddux back in the day was notorious. Like, why am I going to show a guy my best stuff in spring training? Why am I going to show him the devastating stuff in spring training? And I think after one spring training outing, he gave up like 4 or 5 runs in 3 innings, and he came off the field and they asked him about it. He kind of laughed and said, well, I hope they can hit fastballs because that's all I was throwing. It's like, I would hope major leaguers can hit fastballs coming over the plate. So, I think there's some of that at play when you talk about spring training as well. So I think this Braves team is going to be fine. And again, I think much like last year, you've got the dynamic where you are not, especially when Acuna comes back, you are not reliant on one guy to carry you. If somebody has a bad couple of weeks, you can still get through. I mean, as we said, Marcell Ozuna was suspended for most of the year last year. Ronald Acuna missed the last half of the season last year. Braves still won. Freddie Freeman had a prolonged slump. Austin Riley, first half of the year, had a prolonged slump where he was not hit. And what happened? It turned out fine. Again, because they weren't relying on one guy to go through and carry the team all the way home. We've got so much to get to here on the show. Scott Carter, FloridaGators.com, will join us coming up in about 20 minutes. Chase Earl, Sports Talk, ATL.com, joins us when we come back here. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you're making us a part of your day, streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com, and on your mobile device with the ESPN app. Glad you're with us on the show. Braves a week away from the start of the 2022 season. Joining us here from Sports Talk, ATL.com. Chase Earl joins us here on 3 and Out. Chase, welcome. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. I appreciate you guys for having me.
Yeah, man, appreciate you coming on and joining us, defending World Series champs. How do you feel a week out about the 2022 version that Alex Anthopoulos has put together?
Well, I'll be honest. I feel a lot better about this version than I do last year's team. I mean, we didn't have Ronald Acuna going into the playoffs last year. You get Marcell Ozuna back. A lot of people kind of forget about him. He was a Triple Crown threat in 2020. That's going to be two huge bats in the middle of the lineup. So I know you lose Soler, you lose Jock Peterson, but those are two upgrades. But I think the big thing about this team that people are going to really learn to love is they're not going to blow any games. This bullpen is going to be the best in baseball. The addition of Kenley Jansen, the addition of Colin McHugh, Tyler Matzek, AJ Minter, Luke Jackson, Will Smith. I mean, if you get a lead past the fourth inning, this team's going to win games. And that's nice because that hasn't always been the case with the Braves, especially over the last 3 years.
Chase, I know you have your roster predictions up. How do you see the back end of this rotation? I think we know about the front end of the rotation, and are the Braves going to go with a six-man rotation for some time?
I'm leaning towards a six-man rotation because you start out with 14 games in 14 days. Usually you have a lot of off days at the beginning of the season. So I think we're going to see a six-man rotation. And I think they're going to go with three young guys. It's going to be Kyle Wright and Huascar Ynoa. I'm pretty much penciled them in as 4 and 5. And then the sixth spot, I think it's going to be Mueller, Kyle Mueller, Tucker Davidson, or maybe Spencer Strider. I mean, he's looked great. He hums at 100 miles per hour. He's one of the Braves' most exciting prospects. But I'd probably give it to Davidson. Like, I lean towards him. But those guys are all going to get opportunities this year at the major league level.
Chase, when you think about this roster top to bottom, obviously it's going to be much better when a guy like Ronald Acuna Jr. comes back. But it's got to feel good knowing that in spite of him not playing that last year, you still won the World Series. They don't have to rush him back.
Yeah, I mean, the roster is set without him just fine. I mean, it's pretty much the same as last year, maybe even a little bit better without him. So when he gets there, it's just icing on the cake. I mean, I just can't wait to see that man. But top to bottom, I think this roster is significantly better than the one last year, especially with Ronald back. And you don't need, we still have Mike Soroka. He could be back at some point this year. I'm not counting on it. But if he comes back healthy and is a shell of himself, that's a huge upgrade to the rotation. And you have a guy like Kirby Yates. I mean, I talked about that bullpen. He could come back in August, September. I mean, this is the best Braves roster that we've had since the early 2000s when Gary Sheffield and Chipper Jones and Andrew Jones were roaming the field. This is a way better roster than we've had the last 4 years. So it's hard to repeat in baseball. A lot of things can happen, a ton of variables, but the Braves fans should be super excited about this season.
Absolutely. I don't know how many people, a lot of people are starting to pick them for the division that didn't the 4 years prior. You get Matt Olson in that trade from Oakland. Do you worry about him trying to prove he's worth the 8-year deal and live up to the hometown fans' expectation? They're obviously going from Oakland to a team that is looking to contend at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. I mean, you talk about a kid who's from Parkview High School. He's going to have a lot of pressure on him. He's filling the shoes of Freddie Freeman, the face of the franchise for the last 12 years. But and honestly, I haven't watched a ton of Matt Olson. I've obviously looked at the back of his baseball card, but he plays in Oakland. I don't get to see him, nightly basis. But everything I've heard from him, off the field, level-headed guy, great guy off the field, great guy in the clubhouse, and I think he's going to handle it very well. As far as on the field, you're pretty much splitting hairs of whether Freddie Freeman or Matt Olson's better. But I do think there is a bit of pressure. So that's something to watch out for early in the season if he comes out something, because he's filling the shoes of Freddie Freeman. He's coming back home, and not a lot of people can do that.
I know you've mentioned Ronald Acuna a few times, Chase. Do you think we see him early in the season in the DH role? And if not, how do you see the DH role being filled?
Yeah, that's what they say. Late April DH for Ronald Acuna. We'll see. I mean, I know they're going to take things, but honestly, if we're being honest, if they weren't taking things slowly and they really need him, I think he'd go out there and play today. So I do think, late April is a realistic expectation for him to be in the DH role. Probably late May for him, roaming center field or right field, wherever they play him. And then until then, the DH is kind of up in the air. I filled it with Manny Pena, the backup catcher. Alex Dickerson's the guy to look out for. and maybe a little dark horse if Ronald Acuna takes a little bit longer than we expect, and William Contreras plays really well in AAA. I think you could see him out there in right field or as a DH. His bat, he's got all-star potential in that bat.
Because I know you mentioned that it's obviously hard to, repeat in any sport, no matter what it is, definitely in baseball. But how competitive is this division going to be this year?
It's going to be as tough as it gets. I mean, you look around the National League, obviously you have the Dodgers, but they're not in the division. The Mets, I always say the Mets on paper look fantastic. They look just as good as the Braves. There's no reason they shouldn't be right there with the Braves at the end of the season. But I always have this phrase, and it's the Mets are going to Met. At some point, like, they just do it. Like, they just struggle. I don't know if it's the clubhouse vibes or whatever it is, but when push comes to shove, they kind of choke. We'll see if that changes. The Phillies, great offensively. They've got some holes in their pitching, bullpen, starting pitching. I think it's going to be tough for them to maintain over 162 games. But Mets for sure. Mets and Braves are going to be down to the wire. That's what I have it as.
Chase Earl, SportsTalkATL.com, joining us. And again, could this be a better? You said it's the best roster they've had. Could this be a better team and win less games than they did last year?
I think regular season wise, the only issue I have with this roster that could prevent them from not winning 90 to 100 games is if an injury happens to the infield. The depth behind, they have the best infield arguably in baseball, but the depth behind it is very worrisome. I mean, Orlando Arcia, and then what? So it's not very good. Those guys usually play 162 games. So if you have a big injury, you lose a guy for a season, that's the only way I see them not living up to that. I think the Vegas win total is 89.5. They will easily eclipse that as long as they don't suffer an injury in the infield. And if they stay healthy the whole season, get a Mike Soroka back, get a Kirby Yates back, I mean, they should win 100 games. They really should.
And I think, as you've referenced, Kevin Thomas, Ben True, we've all talked about this. I mean, our game's going to be over in the 6th, 7th inning with as good as this bullpen is and the number of different guys you can run out situationally.
Yeah, I mean, it should be. Brian Snitker, it's funny because last year, and I was one of them, I was all over him for, his bullpen decisions and stuff like that. Then the bullpen plays great. The bullpen's kind of the funny thing. They kind of decide whether the manager's good or bad. And Brian Snitker's got an embarrassment of riches, and he's going to look like the best manager in baseball because no matter who he chooses at the end of games, they're going to get it done. I mean, I feel confidently in that saying. If they got 3 or 4 guys that are used to closing games, and they got depth like nobody's business. I mean, you're talking about guys like Kirby Yates, Darren O'Day, who have been in this league, been all-stars. They're going to be pitching the 4th, 5th innings, like struggling to get, appearances because this is the deepest bullpen and I've seen in the Braves maybe in my lifetime.
You mentioned Brian Snitker got a chance to be, manager of the year with the embarrassment of riches that he had. He gets a lot of criticism during the year with how he manages that bullpen. How would you, obviously coming off a World Series, but how would you judge his temperament as far as like who is he going to run out there night in and night out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have really any criticism. I mean, he was perfect during last postseason, and that's really how I judge managers. I think a lot of guys with a talented roster like the Braves could manage them to 90 wins or something like that. But it's how you perform in the postseason. I mean, he was incredible. He's got a great temperament. He keeps the guys even kill for 162 games. I think that's critical. And I just think, like I said, you have that embarrassment of riches in the bullpen this year. Like, it really isn't going to matter who he chooses. Like, they're going to go out there and perform. And the Braves should be able to close games. And Brian Snitker is going to look a lot better than he has in the past.
Chase Earl, SportsTalkATL.com, our guest here on 3 and Out. Chase, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
And the Braves coming back a week from today against the Cincinnati Reds. And, man, everybody's going to be excited once they have the ring ceremony. But obviously a lot of people thinking this team good enough to at least get back and maybe play for a repeat.
Well, and just about everybody we've talked to said this is the best bullpen in baseball. And I haven't even talked about Kirby Yates much. I mean, we haven't because he's not healthy. But you go back to a potential pennant race, and you're looking at the guys you already have plus him, and we'll see Darren O'Day kind of the final couple of spots there in the bullpen. But I think, as we've all said, if you can look at your starting pitcher and say, we don't necessarily need you to go 8. This bullpen is built to carry, 3 innings a night, maybe even more. So I think the bullpen quietly could be the biggest reason why the Braves are the best team in the National League East.
I think when you think about like I said, when you talk about a guy like Alex Anthopoulos and what he's did the best, he's built his team in sections. I mean, obviously he got to make sure that lineup is what it is. The starting pitching is what it is, and now Kevin and BJ. We used to say this. We're a couple of years removed from when the starter goes out. That's when get your popcorn. Now it's about to get very interesting. But while everything else around it was getting better, I think if your strength is your bullpen, you got a shot to win a lot of games. Kevin, like you mentioned, it's hard to win 2-0 these days, 3-0, 1-0. If your starters take you to the 6, which is a freaking luxury these days, the Braves got a shot to be really, really good.
Yeah, I think they, again, have the ability to shorten games on people, and that, again, should cause them to not have to be the comeback kings that they've been under Brian Snickers seemingly since he came on the scene in the late innings. We've got more to come here. It's 3 and Out. Scott Carter, FloridaGators.com, going to join us. We'll talk some spring football with him next here on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here, 3 and Out on this Thursday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, spring practices all across the Southeastern Conference. Joining us here from FloridaGators.com, Scott Carter steps in here on 3 and Out. Scott, welcome. How are you?
Hey, guys. How's everything going? Just in the middle of spring practice down here in Gainesville.
I was going to say, what's the biggest difference in this year's spring practice versus Dan Mullen spring practice?
I mean, there's always a change, when there's a new coach. But to me, the biggest difference, not so much a practice every day, although they are, they're very active, not a lot of wasted time out there. I mean, Billy Napier is a very attention to detail guy, and you can tell there's a kind of a renewed focus out there. But more than that, I think it's just a total reboot of the program beyond maybe just your typical coaching change. We've seen that at Florida, four times now in the last decade, where a new coach comes in and, a lot of that change that we're talking about happens. But this one it goes deeper in the fact that it's just, like I said, it feels like a reboot of the program. There's a lot more staff. There's a lot more going on outside of what's going on in the field as, Napier tries, I think, to modernize the program some and return the Gators to their place where they were accustomed to, at the top of the SEC. But it's been a while, and now they're trying to get to where Alabama and Georgia are. And I think they had to go, add a lot of elements that the program was lacking.
What are the priorities here in the spring? I mean, are they kind of just, as you said, you have a new coaching staff, lets everybody get on the same page, or are there specific position groups or kind of areas on the team that Coach Napier and the staff are focusing on?
Well, I think everything's kind of wide open, really, in positions that, I can, you feel like, okay, start at quarterback, Anthony Richardson now appears kind of the clear leader there with Emory Jones no longer around. But you also have a transfer they brought in Jack Miller. I mean, they brought him in here for a reason, to provide some competition. And I think it's the typical, a lot of learning a new system. The coaching staff's learning the players and their strengths. The players are learning, their coach's expectations. But I think the focus is just really starting over. I mean, last season was a losing season. I think this team lost some of its discipline by the end of Dan Mullen's tenure. And I think that's what Billy Napier and his staff have really focused on, is trying to just reestablish some discipline, some expectations, and really learn about each other. Because I can't tell you right now, there's probably 22 starting positions. I can't tell you probably 18 of them who will start by the first game against Utah in September.
Scott, the one thing I'm noticing a lot when you think about this defense, I mean, a lot of teaching going on. I mean, Patrick Toney, Sean Spencer, Captain Chaos, Corey Raymond, Mike Peterson. I mean, you got some guys that was known. I mean, Corey Raymond was considered one of the best DB coaches in the country. Talk about that attention to detail. And outside of having big-time players, you got some big-time coaches with a big-time reputation.
Yeah, I mean, Corey Raymond, of all the new hires bid, I think he probably got the fans the most excited because he's a known commodity in the SEC. Florida and LSU have had this battle for a decade now as whether, which one's DBU. Well, he was the one out at LSU giving them that reputation. Of course, Florida's always had a lot of good players come through at those positions. So he's probably not got the kind of roster he wants his first year here, but he's got some good players. They got Kamari Wilson, the 5-star in camp already, so they're working with him. And, Trey Dean's back. So, yeah, there's a lot of teaching there. Really, Patrick Toney, a guy who was with the Napier as his defensive coordinator out of Louisiana Lafayette. He's here splitting the defensive coordinator duties with Sean Spence. So it's a new system on that side of the ball. And I think just from listening to a couple of players talk this week, Brenton Cox Jr., they asked him specifically, he's played to that edge rusher position in Todd Grantham's defense, which he called a loose 9. Well, he calls what Toney and his staff are doing right now as a tight 5. So I think they've they've just, they're putting a new system in there, tightening some things up. Maybe not as freewheeling as what the Gators played under Grantham, but it goes back to that discipline and structure that Napier's known for. And just from my short time around him, I mean, you can tell this guy, he does not leave any stones unturned. So they're going to have a plan, and they're going to expect the players to stick to that plan and to get the results they want on the field.
Billy Napier is a guy that's very, very attention to detail. I mean, with all these different phases that they're going through before they even got the spring practice, I don't even know what phase they in now. I see him wearing a different shirt every day. But how has he been in practice? I've heard that, I've seen a lot of players saying, look, he's trying to make sure that he speaks to every position group and try to, make his imprint known to everybody on the squad.
Yeah, I've noticed he moves around a lot for a head coach in practice. He does bounce around to the different position groups, and he's almost like, he looks like a professor sometimes, like he's deep in thought as he watches stuff. But I've also seen him, get his head in there and really get emotional and bring some fire to certain drills. So I think that's just who he is. But I think he goes all back a bit to the fact that this guy, he's been in winning programs. He's waited a long time to take over a program of his own, like Florida. Even while he was at Louisiana, he had a couple of other opportunities to leave there, but it just didn't feel right for him. And Florida finally felt right. And, this is a big opportunity for Billy Napier. And I'm interested to see how it plays out because, again, I don't think the roster is nearly as talented as what they want here and what they will have. But I think they can be a lot better with some of the discipline and structure that we talked about earlier.
That being said, Scott, how patient is Gator Nation going to be there with Billy Napier trying to build the program back to where they want it to be? I know people talk about having patience, but then in reality, you lose a couple of games, maybe people think you shouldn't, and you're right back on the hot seat. How much time do you think Billy Napier gets to really say this is where the roster needs to be? I'm getting it there versus maybe what the fans are waiting for.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that balance that you have to kind of take into factor. I think anybody who lives in reality knows that, it's going to take, I think, a couple of years at least for him to get the kind of roster that they need to compete with Georgia and Alabama in the SEC right now. I think they can show improvement, have a winning season in his first year. Second year, you hope to climb from there. And maybe by third year, have it to a place where his players and his system's all in place. But I think, Gator fans are probably going to have some patience because, again, I just don't see this being a kind of roster that, Steve Spurrier took over, that Urban Meyer took over, and even Dan Mullen, you look back on it, I mean, they had a bad season the year before under Jim McElwain when Mullen got here, and they turned it around pretty fast. But I think that roster back then in 17 going into 18 was probably deeper and more talented than what this one is. But I think they have a great potential player in Anthony Richardson who, if he can live up to what his physical skill set is and his talent, he can help overcome a lot of those roster spots. But that's a big if that right now. We're just still waiting to see if he's going to stay healthy for a full season and what he does if he's the guy.
And Scott, you had the big plays with Anthony Richardson last year, his potential. I know Billy Napier, when he was at Louisiana, they were amongst the national leaders in running the football, really good at the line of scrimmage. What do you expect from this Florida offense this fall? And from a scheme standpoint, sort of what are the expectations?
Well, when you look at what Napier's done, I mean, he coaches always love to talk about that balance. And he has that, but also I think he leans more toward the run, using his quarterback. I mean, they brought in Montreal Johnson from Louisiana, who was the Sun Belt Conference Player of the Year out there last year under Napier. I think, getting him was big for this roster. So I expect it, to be run-oriented, but at the same time, you're going to have to pass the ball in today's landscape of the game. And I think, that's why it was interesting to me that you have a guy like Anthony Richardson, who is a dynamic runner, a dynamic athlete. I think he's got some room to improve as a passer, and I think I've seen some of that this spring. He does look better throwing the ball. But also, I think Jack Miller, they brought him in as a kind of a safety valve because he's more of your traditional drop back passer. So that's something that, obviously fans and we'll all be watching closely to see how that develops. But I just see this as, Billy Napier loves to run the ball, man. He loves to use his quarterback in the running game, but that's what he did at Louisiana. You look at it with what Levi Lewis did out there. So we'll see how that factors in at Florida with a talent like Richardson.
Javon Dexter, Brenton Cox Jr., these two guys are, slated to be really, really not just key contributors on the defense, but kind of like lead the way as far as like those guys leading by example for the whole team. If those two guys can put it together, even though they play, both on the defensive line, how good can this defense be? And how crazy can they make life for opposing offenses if both of those guys can play up to their potential?
Well, if those guys really have the breakout season, which I think both can, I mean, that's going to be a huge boost for this defense because there's some question marks around them. But, Dexter and Cox both are physically gifted players, both five-star recruits, and this is their year to really shine. I mentioned Kamari Wilson. He's a freshman, but another guy in the secondary who I can see getting some playing time right away and maybe having a chance to impact the team on a big basis. Vitro Miller, he's not a flashy guy, but I think having him back in the middle as a veteran will really help out, just some stability there. But the defensive line, they're going to have some guys other than Dexter. At this point, you've got some guys who haven't played a lot of football at this level. The one I'm really interested in is Desmond Watson, the big kid, about 400 some pounds. They were talking about him in practice the other day. They said he bench pressed 560 the other day. I haven't been able to confirm that, but more than one person said that. I mean, if that guy can develop and get in the middle and become a real run stopper, that would just be a huge boost for those playmakers on the edge, like Brenton Cox and some of the younger guys. So I think there's some talent there on defense, but there's also a lot of questions. A lot of guys getting opportunities and reps this spring to see what they can, provide in the fall. I know that coaches are really watching that group.
It's got obviously you see these guys every day. You look at how are they picking up the scheme? Because I know when Grantham was there, it was they can't line up because these they're trying to get the play in. Talk about on offense, they made it more vanilla because you didn't have guys that could really separate on the outside. You've been there with those guys. How are they picking up the scheme on both sides of the ball?
Yeah, they seem to be doing pretty well so far. I mean, there's a lot of coaching going on out there on that field, and I think there's a lot of learning going on. But I do see that Napier and his staff. I mean, there's a lot more people out there in terms of, you got your coaches working with them on the field, but before they get out there on the field, there's a lot of teaching going on in the building with the analysts and just the support personnel. I think they want to have these guys up to speed as much as possible as they can, going into the off season. And that work takes place this spring because then it's, the coaches don't have a lot of contact with them until they come back till fall. So, but I do sense some real organization out there, maybe better than I have the last year or two. And it's showing just the way the practice is run. I mean, there's, like I said earlier, there's not a lot of downtime. They're moving at a pretty brisk pace from drill to drill. And if you are not on point, you're not going to be in there.
Scott Carter, FloridaGators.com, our guest here on 3 and Out. Scott, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right, guys. Take care.
We've got more to come here on this Thursday. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here. 3 and out. Matt Olson finally went yard at spring training. His first home run with the Braves, as the Braves and Tampa Bay going at it. They are through 7.5, and the Rays beating the Braves 5-1 for whatever that is worth. At least, fellas, you aren't the Washington Nationals who gave up 29 yesterday.
How?
I don't know. 15.
Is that the waste you be saying? You just wasting all them runs.
I mean, well,
I mean, you can say you were in it till close to you gave up 15 in the 8th inning.
that's incredible. I mean, 15 in one inning.
How would you be melted down if that was the Braves? I know we act like we don't matter what Springer. The Braves
I
gave up 29.
just think at the 8th inning, it's probably like, these guys aren't making it.
I mean, look at and you mentioned this earlier. I mean, if you're a pitcher and maybe you've only gone a third of an inning, and then you got a third of an inning in the 15-run inning. I mean, what do some of these ERAs look like for the spring?
I might need an abacus to figure that out. But no, I think in those cases is, a lot of times even that late in the game is guys who 90% of whom are not going to be on team. But yeah, I saw that yesterday, and so I was like, 29 runs for the Cardinals over the Nationals. I'm like, well, maybe I feel better about picking them last in the National League East after all. But no, Braves doing just fine down in spring. But Matt Olson, a lot of people saying, hey, the first home run, go ahead.
First of many.
Get it out of your system and get ready to go coming up a week from today. And I know, again, we can talk about it more later, but how much pressure does he feel to be Freddie Freeman? Just to go up there and be like,
I think you have. I mean, is it possible to kind of not? Is it possible to avoid that, or is that just the reality?
That's just the reality. I mean, Kevin, it goes back. He's replacing the man. No one wants to be the guy to replace the man. But just because you're replacing the man don't mean you can't be the man. And I know it's going to be Freddie because Freddie is the best first baseman in baseball. Matt, go out there and, show us you can leave the yard and send at biscuits and gravy.
Just be you. That's like the advice everybody gives. We'll come back. Take 3 around the corner here. 3 and out. Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back. Hour 2, 3 and out on this Thursday. Thanks for making us a part of your day. We'll look at some changes going on in the National Football League, a surprising retirement, also a quick hire there by Tampa Bay. Michael Rodak, AL.com, will join us. You got Alabama's pro day and spring practice going on, and I saw somebody hypothesize out there after watching Evan Neal do his thing, say Evan Neal's the best player in the draft. If I'm Jacksonville, I just take him and deal with it. And put him on the field and figure it out later.
Like, could you play him at guard?
That's what I'm saying. So we'll see. But we'll talk with Michael Rodak, AL.com, coming up later here in this hour. That being said, it's 4 o'clock. Let's take 3 here on 3 and Out. I believe BJ you had requested to MC the Take 3 questions today. Is that
no? I'm going to ask you the third question about soccer
just the third
for you.
One?
Yeah,
okay, just the third one.
It's for you.
It's not really, but all right. Take 1. This is from First Take earlier today. Duke and Carolina going to play in the Final Four. First time they've ever played in the tournament. This is from First Take. They put together all-time Duke and North Carolina team, which I think we were all arguing whether it was a good all Duke and all North Carolina team. You could add other guys and take guys off. Who would win? Duke, they had Jason Williams, Kyrie Irving, Grant Hill, Zion Williamson, and Christian Laettner. And for UNC, you had Phil Ford, Jerry Stackhouse, Michael Jordan, Anton Jameson, and Rasheed Wallace.
Wow. Wow. And yeah, there are so many guys. I mean, we were talking about Blue Bloods the other day. I mean, North Carolina and Duke, you're talking about dozens of All-Americans. You're talking about ACC Player of the Year, Final Four MVP resumes. I mean, just absolutely incredible. And I don't know. I feel bad whichever way I go here. I mean, I don't know. I've looked at this during the show meeting. I've gone back and forth. I think the way I'll go is this. The talent is off the charts, comparable. I think if you're saying the two teams are even, right? And with this, you have Jason Williams, Kyrie Irving, Grant Hill, Zion Williamson, Christian Laettner, and then Phil Ford, Jerry Stackhouse, Michael Jordan, Antoine Jameson, Rasheed Wallace. If it's close and it's a tie, I guess I'll go with who has Jordan. I guess that's kind of the only way I can justify it. I could go either way. These are probably 10 of the best players in college basketball history, and I think to say that I feel like one team would win going away. No, I mean this is going to be a awesome hypothetical game, but if I have to pick, I will go with the team that has Michael Jordan. So I will lean North Carolina, but I don't feel good about it.
Wow. I mean, to even make this list, I mean, you could go with 10 brand new. I mean, 5 different guys from each squad as far as like who you're going to go with. But obviously Jordan, and then this is just Jordan in North Carolina. He got better and better after he won, hit the shot, to beat Georgetown, he ended up winning the national championship. But my thing is this. Grant Hill, Christian Laettner, who actually played together, and Jay Will. Look, I love Jordan. I love Rasheed. I love, these guys. But Jay Will, we don't appreciate how good Jay Will was. Jay Williams was the truth. And the thing about Kyrie is that's got to be based off what Kyrie's doing in the NBA. He only played, 7, 8 games with Duke. Excuse me. Oh, my God. I hate to go up against MJ. I really do. But BJ, Jordan going to give you his points. All right, Kyrie, Kyrie can get buckets. Ain't nobody staying with Jay Will, right? Who's going to match the athleticism of freaking Zion? And Christian Laettner might be, college-wise, there doesn't get more I hate this. You cannot be more clutch than Christian Laettner. Whatever he needs. There was a game I think he didn't miss a shot. Like he was like, so I don't like to give Duke anything because I am not, I can't stand Duke. But for this game, I might have to go with them Dukies.
Let's do the tiebreaker.
No, it's Carolina for me. I mean, and again, that's taking nothing away from Duke, but I mean, I could argue that you may not have the best North Carolina lineup you could put together out there. And again, that's no disrespect for those guys, but I think Rasheed Wallace, very good. I think, again, that Rasheed, I guess it'd be Rasheed Zion, would be interesting because Rasheed could play out beyond the three-point arc. Zion would have to come out and guard him. Anton Jameson, Christian Laettner could be very interesting. Again, I think there's a couple guys. I mean, people forget Tyler Hansborough when he played in North Carolina. He's out here. He averaged ACC 20, 30 points a night.
Redick?
Yeah, no JJ Redick for Duke. So I mean, this thing could get really deep.
But that's the thing. When you have, and, I don't know off the top of my head, what, 30 All-Americans? I mean, first team All-Americans at each school, if not more. I mean, incredible.
All right, moving along. Take 2.
You went Duke?
I went with Carolina.
Carolina.
I mean, Michael Jordan again. And I'm actually surprised. James Worthy didn't make it onto this list, but I didn't make the list. I have to go with what's put in front of me. All right, moving along. Take 2. If Tiger Woods plays in the Masters, and obviously there's a big talking point, will he contend?
Okay, we don't know yet, and from what we were saying earlier, right? Could be Wednesday or Thursday of next week before we know. I would imagine if you're Tiger Woods and you went to Augusta, you're going through the practice rounds, whatever, to see how your body responds. You're not going out there unless you feel like you can be at your best, right? I don't think I don't know this, but I don't think if Tiger Woods goes out there and goes, man, I'm going to be about 70%. I just don't think he's going to go out there and do that. And remember, nobody expected the last win.
Nope.
Nobody did.
Nope.
Nobody. And it sounds like a reach to say, okay, the week before the tournament, we don't even know if he's going to play. We don't know kind of how the practice round even went in terms of how he's feeling. But could he play in the Masters and contend? All kind of traditional thinking would say no. He's hurt. He hadn't been out there in some time, but it's Tiger Woods. And I keep going back to what Chris, when he won the last one. I mean, Christian's telling us if he plays, he's going to be in the mix. And we're going, yeah, but he hadn't. If he plays, I think you don't count him out. If he plays, he's going to play to win. If he plays, he's going to play to compete. I think he's going to have kind of that psychological edge. I mean, I think he impacts everything when he's out there. So don't know if he's going to play. I hope he does. I mean, I think Rory McIlroy said it would be phenomenal for golf if he goes. If he goes, I think he will be in the mix. I don't think he's going to go out there if he doesn't feel like he can compete. And when you think about Tiger Woods, competing means competing to win it all, not make the weekend, not be in the top 15, not have a good showing. So I think it sounds kind of counterintuitive given all that's out there, but I'm going to say yes. If he goes, I think he goes and plays well and is there.
I'm going to say yes as well for everything you just mentioned, BJ. But I go back a couple of years ago. Messing around. We here talking about is Tiger? Is it done? Is it over with for Tiger? Because we looking at him playing a tournament, don't play in a tournament, in and out of tournaments because of his back, because of his injuries, because of his knee, because of just getting older, the wear and tear. And then our own Christian Gokell comes here and goes, what are y'all doing?
He called it.
Yeah, he said, this is Tiger Woods, man. Like, everybody, listen, how many people on this tour grew up Tiger Woods fans? How many of these guys say, if I could just do what he done, or just implement, how many guys wear the red and black, on Sunday because of Tiger? And we said, what's going to happen, Chris? He said, listen, man, he's going to be on the leaderboard. He's going to be in the last group. They're going to come around there on that back nine. He's going to put pressure on the guys he's teeing up with, and he's going to win that thing. Every player has one great performance left in them. Golf is a little bit different because it's, you got to play well over a period of time. I don't think Tiger Woods going to muster up all the energy, everything he needs to do to try to go out there just to be out there. He said, look, man, just like a LeBron, just like a Tom Brady, I'm not here to just be here. Y'all are waiting on me to get old, and I don't. Somebody told you yesterday, BJ, and my daddy would say, while getting older is inevitable, getting old is a choice. Tiger Woods said, I am that dude. Now, I do think he's going to contend. Now, when you say contend, that can mean a lot of things. That could be, listen, man, I make the cut. I'm there on Sunday.
That's not what people think when you say contend. They don't mean like, hey, will he be there on the week? They mean like are you going to be there late in the broadcast on Sunday, right?
Yeah, I agree.
I just want to BJ, give me a look. I mean, if
I
say contend,
I'm saying if he goes
when I say contend, you don't think make the cut.
Right. And maybe that's not fair. But I think that's going to be the expectation.
For any other player, it ain't fair. But Tiger Woods also showing up the tournaments he ain't going to be in on a yacht just to make you think he's going to play in it. But as great as that story was 2 years ago, if he does it now, does he drop the mic and say, all right, because I cannot do anything to top this if he does continue to win that thing.
Well, and then he's one step closer to tying Jack Nicklaus. So I as far as major championships are concerned, I don't think he's going to. Again, I'm not.
You don't think he's going to play, or
no, I think he's going to play. I mean, you don't go fly your private jet to Augusta a week for the tournament to get a practice round in if you don't have the intention of playing, right? You didn't show up for the champions dinner a week early. Like that's not why you're there. So I think he's going to play. Now, contend. I mean, he hasn't played on the tour in a year. And I know people say, well, what does that mean? I mean, then we talk about it all the time. Guys, we're saying, look, and for different reasons, but Colin Kaepernick hasn't played in 5 years. He's going to be a different guy when he comes back because he has not played competitively. Michael Vick was a different player, still pretty good, but a different player 2 years out of the game than when he came back. Tiger Woods, because of injury, he's getting older. His body is, because of those injuries, breaking down a little bit. And he hasn't played competitively in a long time. I don't think you just roll out at the Masters and be like, I'm about to drop a green jacket on this thing. If he does, like Ben said, maybe that's the ultimate. I mean, Mike dropped, be like, y'all still can't beat me. But I mean, at some point, it just defies. Like, to me, this would be like the equivalent of, Tom Brady not playing at all next year. The Patriot or the Buccaneers sign him in week 17, and he goes out and drops 503 touchdowns in the first round of the playoffs. And you're going, that just doesn't happen. And so I've looked at it and say Tiger Woods is the greatest of all time, no question. But I don't think you just roll into Augusta with the best of the best and say, I'm going to win this thing, having not played competitively in a year. I just don't see that happening.
No, I mean, look, if anybody's ever earned the benefit of the doubt, it's Tiger. But I think sometimes it's and I'm not saying he's doing this. It's the respect level of the game that you have saying, look, sometimes even if you are the GOAT, even if you are the face, even if you are almost bigger than the sport itself, there are certain things that has to happen. The basics, the going through the fundamentals, making sure your body is ready, being able to go to tournament. And sometimes think about winning tournaments just to get your body back. But yeah, I keep on seeing all these Colin Kaepernick. He's at UCLA. He's at Michigan. That's throwing on air. That is not Aaron Donald trying to barrel down on you. That's not the offensive line missing a block. And that's 5 years later. Look good throwing it. Hey, man, Colin Kaepernick want to throw with y'all. Man, I go out there and catch a Colin Kaepernick. Man, what's up, Cap? That ain't the real thing. The real thing, there's pressure, and then there's the Masters. I'm rooting for you, Tiger. It's going to be rough, but I think if anybody can, it's him.
Take 3 for Kevin.
Uh-oh.
I know he was watching last night.
Watching what?
U.S. men's national team qualifies for the World Cup. Now, they did it in the most Kevin Thomas way ever. Entering the game last night against Costa Rica, at Costa Rica, they had to not lose by 6. So they didn't have to win. They didn't have to tie.
Just had to not lose by a certain
So they
amount.
lost 2-0 and thus qualified for the World Cup.
Well, congratulations.
So coming up later in the year, how excited is Kevin, passionate soccer fan, for the upcoming World Cup now that the U.S. is qualified?
I should probably set a reminder on my phone to let me know when it's coming up. I did see our good friend Matt Smith, who tweets about everything and knows when the Duke's Mayo Bowl is going to be in 2023. He did say it was on a college football weekend with some pretty good college football games. So I think the question to be turned, because I'm not going to be excited. I don't care if it can be played at any time. I'm not watching. Would you turn off? I don't know who it is. If it's Bama A&M, would you turn off Bama A&M to watch that?
The World Cup is once every 4 years.
That's true, and we did finally get in, so they should give us a participation.
And didn't okay.
What?
I'm saying didn't make it the last time.
I didn't miss it.
Well, BJ, tell us how the second half went of the game.
Well, they lost. Well, it was 0-0 at halftime.
No.
I fell asleep.
Oh.
Not because the game was. I was tired. Did you and I not have a busy day yesterday?
Yeah. No. Did it give you comfort knowing that you can go to sleep because of what they did against Panama?
Yes, because it was 0-0 at intermission, and I thought, it would be really disappointing.
Now, what's the likelihood? What's the likelihood of you going to sleep if they didn't beat Panama?
That would have been. I was tired last night, but yes, to just not lose by 6 and get in again. You lost by 2, but qualified for the World Cup.
So if the World Cup comes, to America, and it's in the ATL, me, you, and Kevin gonna go up there.
Yeah, all going.
He gonna hit the little bong thing, and Kevin get to say, "I believe that we will win."
Bong thing.
The little bong. What's it called?
Is that a thing? I don't know.
Don't they hit something? I thought I saw Brian Jordan hit the little thing. They go bong. You know what I'm talking about?
I think the Atlanta United have like a gold nail or
Oh
something.
yeah.
They don't do that. They ain't gonna do that for U.S. men's national team. I mean, do they have a bong? You don't know?
I
I
I
don't
just know
know.
they qualified for the World
Why are
Cup.
you asking me? I certainly don't know.
I thought BJ knows everything. No. I'm going to say this. I was there against Panama. BJ is Papa BJ. It was, mind you, it's over with. Like the USA, they showed out. So much so, Panama, they ain't even playing soccer no more. They just hitting about people out in the face. BJ leaves, and Panama scores 1 point. And JT loses. He goes, come on. Like, I said, look, man, they just won 5-1. So they're in. We got to go and make sure I got to see if I can get me 2 jerseys put together so I can put on one and get one for you and Kevin.
All right. How many
Yeah.
games are they guaranteed to play?
Well, you're in a group. You'll play at least 3 if you don't advance to the knockout stage.
Okay. So we got a couple we got to talk about. After that, we're all right. I think I can name one player, and that's because I've heard you talking about Christian Pulisic. I don't know where he plays, but
Good for
that's it.
you.
Don't ask me to name anybody else on the team because I don't know. Christian asked me to name as many U.S. soccer players I could play, and I said that, and then I was like, I don't know any others. He goes, just try it. So he's like, yeah, he doesn't play anymore. Like, yeah, he doesn't play anymore. So I apparently knew guys from like 10 years ago.
What's the real famous dude? Oh, can't think.
Freddie Adu.
No. He's like the
Is
most
he still
famous
on the
one.
team?
Well, like Landon Donovan, Clint
Landon
Dempsey.
Donovan is one. Kobe Jones is not from America, correct? Is he his? Kobe Jones?
Kobe Jones was a star for the national team. Great player.
All right,
That didn't answer the question. Is he not? He's not from there.
I don't know. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but he is. He used to play for LA.
Play for the U.S. men's national team. Yep.
That and more facts as we get closer to the World Cup coming up later this year. We've got more to come. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We will chat with Michael Rodak, AL.com, coming up in just a little bit. Alabama with their pro day. Also, spring practice there in Tuscaloosa. We'll get the very latest from Michael Rodak coming up in just a little bit. But business continues in the National Football League. The Tampa Bay Bucks announced Bruce Arians, or I guess Bruce Arians announced it, said he was going to retire and move into the front office there with Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay turns around and hires defensive coordinator Todd Bowles to be promoted as the head coach. So he now comes in, will work with Tom Brady and company, becomes the sixth minority head coach there in the National Football League.
Super duper happy for Todd Bowles. Obviously, a guy like Bruce Arians has done a lot for minority hires when you just not just Todd Bowles and Byron Leftwich and different. I think if I'm not mistaken, he hired the first or one of the when he was in Arizona. I think he was one of the first guys to hire a woman as an assistant coach. So Bruce Arians has always been ahead of the curve. He's never ever seemed to be a guy that want to get in the way of progress. I saw somebody they're gonna put him into the Tampa Bay Bucks Ring of Honor, rightfully so. But I'm happy for Todd Bowles. I think sometimes the people say why Todd Bowles and not Byron Leftwich. I think Todd Bowles want to continue to help Byron Leftwich kind of like add to his resume. But Todd Bowles is a guy that did it the hard way. I mean, he's earned his. I mean, he's been a head coach with the Jets. Well, was a head coach. And most of the time, BJ and Kevin, when we talk about black guys getting head coaching jobs, usually don't get a second time. Usually it's one and done. We talk about Lovie Smith, him getting a third time this time. I mean, he was one of the 6 coaches that was with the Bucks. But I'm happy for Todd Bowles. I think sometimes when people hear the interim head coaching tab, a lot of times you think that's just so they can go get somebody else. No, I guarantee you, Bruce Arians told the Glazer family, promote Todd. Because if I'm going to go upstairs and get out of the way, I'm going to because you want to be able to have somebody that was on the staff already who understands the dynamic of how the team goes. Basically let Tom do what he does on offense to get the hell out of the way, and I'm going to keep on letting this defense get better with a young guy like Devin White. But super duper happy for a guy like Todd Bowles to go along with, Coach Mike Daniels, obviously Lovie Smith, Mike Tomlin, Coach Ron Rivera, Coach C-Line, and different ones. But now you go from 4, well, you go from 1, really, 1 black. Now you got 6 minority coaches. And I will say this. Bruce Arians helping Todd Bowles get a job. Todd Bowles being on the same staff with a woman as a head coach. I mean, as an assistant coach, the next step would be a woman becoming a head coach, regardless of color. I'm just happy for Bruce Arians still showing that, hey, man, I'm always looking to give the best people job opportunities, whether they be black, white, what may have you. So I'm happy for Todd Bowles.
Yeah, great to see. And Todd Bowles, the 6th minority head coach now, as Kevin mentioned, one of the great defensive coordinators in the National Football League. And look, has earned this chance, earned this opportunity. And great to see more minority coaches getting these opportunities. And I think the expectations, when you talk about this team, we were talking in the show meeting, I guess they did a sports book compilation, and the Bucks and Bills are expected to win the most games in the National Football League coming up this season. But really, really happy for Todd Bowles, and good to see, again, more minority coaches get these opportunities that they've earned. Yeah,
I mean, look, Todd Bowles is one of the best coaches in football. The goal is to make, people of color getting opportunities as head coaches normal, to where we don't got to announce anymore. It's just another guy got a head coaching job. Congratulations. Don't have to be he's this or that. As far as like how many been, there are certain teams that have never had a person of color as a head coach. And are they wrong for that? I don't think they're wrong for it. I just think that the more we start killing these stigmas of certain people could do certain things, because the people at the top, right, wrong, they see it a certain way. I don't know if they wrong for it. I don't know if they right for it. But if everybody you do look like you, but everybody you hire do not, you start asking yourself, what is it going to take? So, I mean, you're seeing more guys get, president jobs, GM jobs and things of that nature. But, hey, Todd Bowles, if I went from the D coordinator to the head coach, Raheem Morris, another guy who was a head coach for the Tampa Bay Bucks, if he wins a Super Bowl, that is undeniable. Because forget being a black head coach to do it. It ain't too many coaches, period, can say they won a Super Bowl. But, hey, man, as long as you got Tom Terrific, you're going to definitely be the favorite.
I was going to say, if Tom Brady's on the sideline, you got a chance, right?
Of course. Todd Bowles know what to do. Todd Bowles say, Tom, how would you like it? Yeah. I don't like a lot of yelling. Just do what you need to do. I'll be over here on defense. Don't worry about me.
You got Tom Brady coming back, and most of your roster. I mean,
Yeah, Shaq Barrett, Shaq Barrett, Devin White.
And Gronk is somewhere having a lot of fun. But y'all know, the closer we get to the regular season,
he might have one more in him.
No, he gonna call Bruce, and Bruce gonna say, "No, I'm no longer the coach, man. Call Todd. Todd Bowles? Yeah, man. You know, he'll come back for 1 year. You know, 1 year, $10 million. Go out there, you know, catch the ball on third down, move the chains, go to the Super Bowl, and he's uncoverable. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the life of Gronk. We can only hope to be him because the greatest thing about Gronk is not the touchdowns. He says he's never cashed an NFL check, only endorsements. Live your life, young man. Enjoy your life. And when I see you, man, let me hold something.
And hold on to it for a minute. I'll keep good care of it. We got more to come here. We'll come back talking Alabama football. Michael Rodak, AL.com. Pro Day taking place there in Alabama. Also, spring practice going on in Tuscaloosa. He'll join us next here on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you on this Thursday, Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Spring practices, pro days going on all across the Southeast and around college football as well. Alabama with their pro day today in the middle of spring practice. And joining us from AL.com to talk about it, Michael Rodak joins us. Michael, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Obviously, for folks around this part of the country, Evan Neal, everybody's saying about as good as it gets from up at the Combine. What were the results of the pro day?
So very, very little that he actually did at the pro day because of the Combine. I mean, there really wasn't a whole lot of need for him to go out there and potentially, put a worse number on the board, essentially. So he skipped all of the, the typical 40 times and the shuttle runs and all that. Really just went out and did some typical O-line drills, moving your feet, shuffling around, stuff that, has some value, but I would imagine that even the guys who were there, the scouts, they already saw that on tape with him. Like, I don't know if they really needed to see, some of those drills. So it was pretty low key pro day for him. I mean, he weighed in. I don't know what his exact weight was, but he was 337 at the Combine. And that was a pretty big story because he's pretty lean for 337, and he's tall, which helps. But even then, it seems like he's got some good weight on him, and I think they saw that up close as well. So, I'd say there's probably limited value for the scouts to see Neal up close at a pro day. For Alabama, it was more about some of the lower key guys, the undrafted guys and late round picks that were really doing everything out there and trying to put their best foot forward because that was their only shot.
I know with Neal, as people kind of project what Jacksonville might do, some will say, well, look, you're okay at tackle. But Neal has played just about every position up front at Alabama. He played guard early in his career. Is that correct?
He did. His freshman year, in 2019, started right away. And he was very highly rated prospect. I think he was their top two prospect in the 2019 Alabama signing class. So he was pretty highly touted right away, kind of lived up to that hype right away, started at guard his first year, and was a little bit heavier back then. I want to say 350, 355 range, which if he does end up playing guard at some point in the NFL, he'd probably put some of that weight back on if you're going to play inside. But then he moved outside after Jedrick Wills got drafted by the Browns 2 years ago. So he moved to right tackle and played really well there, was an all-SEC pick, and that's when he started to really get some of the attention as far as the NFL draft. And even before this season was kind of considered a top 5 pick going in, lived up to that height, moved over to the left side after Alex Leatherwood left to get drafted by the Raiders, and has played there as well. So definitely capable. He's shown it all at all those positions. He's really athletic, what you're looking for out of a tackle, and being able to move and pick up rushers on the outside. I think he's shown all of that. There's some kind of freak show videos that he's put out where he's doing these box jumps from basically a standing position and going up to, I don't know, 4 feet, it seemed like, just off the ground. So he's kind of known as a bit of a freak athlete, a guy who was kind of made to play football in the NFL, went to IMG Academy down there in Florida. And, it's a pipeline to Alabama, and it's a pipeline, obviously, from Alabama to the NFL.
And Michael, obviously, everybody got Jacksonville slated to get a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, but how hard is Evan Neal making it that decision, saying, look, man, you guys can pass up on me, but like you just mentioned, I saw the video you talking about. Most people don't do a vertical. They show us hell ain't doing no vertical, jumping up in there, splitting their legs and being on like, what in the world are they giving these guys in Tuscaloosa, man?
I know, right? Well, he said he eats 3,500 to 4,000 calories a day, which I wish I could eat that and look like he does, but I don't know if that's as possible with some genetics, I'll say. That's how he is. That's kind of what he was born to do, and to play football, and he eats a ton of food, but that's what you need to do. But yeah, as far as, the Jags, number one, I think it all depends on what do they want out of Cam Robinson long term. And I never covered Cam here at Alabama. It was before my time, but good player, it seems like. I don't know if you need to invest 2 high picks like that at tackle, or have Neal play right tackle for a year. I mean, it's possible, but you could also maybe get a more immediate impact player, and that's something that the Jags are going to have to work through. But at the end of the day, I don't know if that, even if Neal goes 3 or 4 or 5, and that's kind of where he seems to be projected more often now, I don't know if that means he's not a number 1 overall pick quality type player. I think it just means the Jags are drafting more for need, which even Nick Saban yesterday said it seems like teams are drafting more for need these days because of the salary cap. And if you have guys on a rookie deal, it certainly helps to play them right away. So that's, I think, ultimately a decision the Jags will need to make.
Michael Rodak, AL.com, joining us here on 3 and Out. And you mentioned some of the guys on that roster trying to make an impression and maybe wedge themselves into, round 5, 6, something like that. How many guys does Alabama expect to go in the draft here coming up in a couple of weeks?
So they had 11 guys at the combine. I would imagine most of those will get drafted. I think maybe Slade Bolden, who's kind of their slot receiver, is probably on the edge there, but it's a little bit less of a top-heavy draft. Like last year, I think Alabama had 6 guys, which was, I think it tied the Miami 2004 draft as the most from one school in one year. They're only going to have 2 first-round picks this year. It seems like Neal and then Jamison Williams, who's coming off the injury, are the only 2 surefire guys. Maybe one more guy like Christian Harris might sneak into the first round, but it seems like day 2, early day 3, there's going to be a lot of Alabama players coming off the board in terms of this being more, I think, a depth draft for Alabama than kind of the high-level talent, which is just, it's kind of how it goes. It goes in cycles, because then next year they could have 2 out of the top 5 picks, and Bryce Young, who just won the Heisman Trophy winner, the quarterback, and then Will Anderson, who's just led the country in sacks last season. So, it just kind of goes in cycles at Alabama, depending on who's coming out which year.
You mentioned Jamison Williams. Where are he and John Mechie as well in terms of returning from injury?
So Mechie's injury was a little bit earlier. That was in early December, SEC championship game. So he's further along, and I haven't really heard any sort of concern about him being ready for training camp or any of that. Jamison's was in January, so it was about a month later, and he's saying a 5 to 7 month timetable is what the doctors have told him. So that puts him, right up against training camp in terms of being able to be back in 100%. Whether he's back the first week of training camp or in the preseason or early in the season, I don't know how much that will or should affect teams drafting him, because you're taking a first round guy, you're having him for 5 years with the option. So I don't think you're going to make that decision not draft the guy because you're not going to have him for training camp. We're not going to have him for the first couple games of the season. That doesn't seem very smart to me. And it seems like when I hear that stuff, just from having covered the NFL previously, that seems like teams trying to get him to fall and trying to get people scared about him and see if he can fall down into the 20s and maybe those teams can pick him up. So I don't think there's a ton of concern. It's an ACL. ACLs are usually pretty clean injuries in terms of guys coming back. And I would imagine that we'll see him playing in the NFL certainly this year.
You mentioned a guy like Slade Bolden who might be on the outside looking in. We talk about all the guys that Alabama going to have potentially get drafted. I saw that, Bryce Young was throwing to him. Is that a relatively new thing? I remember when I came out, they wouldn't allow current players to be able to throw the players going out in the draft. Is that something that maybe the NFL and NCAA decided, look, man, I mean, you already got a quarterback on the roster, just let active players throw the guys who are declared for the draft?
Yeah, I think they changed it a couple years ago. I wish I remember exactly when it happened and what prompted it. But yeah, I mean, Bryce was out there throwing even, last year, I think Mac Jones was throwing to Slade Bolden at his pro day at Alabama. So that was when Slade was a current player. So it's changed. And yeah, you're right. I mean, you want to put your best foot forward. For Mac, you want to throw to the best guys. And it was last year was Devontae Smith and all of his receivers that he had last year. So you go out there and you start throwing to guys you've never met before. They're from a small school around there or something. It usually doesn't work out as well for you when you have all these scouts watching your every move and seeing it for a slip up. So, yeah, I mean, that's good for Bryce too. I think for Bryce to get in front of those scouts when he's potentially the number 1 overall pick next year, that could be good for him as well.
Michael Rodak, AL.com, joining us here. Spring practice going on. Obviously, Alabama did not win the national championship. What has that done for the mood around spring? I know a lot of people say, hey, we'd love to finish second, but at Alabama, obviously, they're shooting for championships. What's been the mood in spring thus far?
Yeah, I think, I don't say they've written off what happened against Georgia, but I think that there's an understanding from Saban and from probably even the Georgia side. Like, I think if you got Kirby Smart in a very honest moment, he'd tell you that game probably would have been a whole lot different if Alabama had its 2 top wide receivers in Mechie and Williams. I mean, we all saw what Williams did to that Georgia defense in the SEC championship game, even Mechie early in that game. And after Williams got hurt, it was just a different Alabama offense. It was Bryce throwing to Slade Bolden and the tight end Cameron Latu. There's a bunch of young receivers that are very talented and, I think wanted the opportunity, but as Nick Saban said, they didn't take advantage of it. So I think that they sort of said, hey, we had guys that were hurt. That's what happened in that game. Maybe we would have won otherwise, but now they're coming into this year with, that this is Bryce Young's last year. That this is Will Anderson's last year. They have a defense that got a lot of juniors back who were kind of on the fence about the draft and should be a better defense than it showed it sometimes last year. And if they can kind of get those pieces on offense, and one of them is Jermaine Burton, who transferred from Georgia, the wide receiver. Another one is the running back, Jahmyr Gibbs, who transferred from Georgia Tech. They're trying to get these experienced guys in who have played, college football, high-level college football before, instead of having to rely on the freshmen or the sophomores who haven't played. And, there's a little bit more doubt there, as we saw in the national championship. So I think it's a team that, as long as that offense around Bryce comes together this season, then they should be in a good spot, especially with the defense being relatively static or stable compared to last year.
Bryce Young had almost 5,000 yards last year passing, almost 50 touchdowns. I mean, what are the expectations? I mean, you can't do about much more than that. I mean, what are the expectations for him? Is there even another level that he could get to?
Yeah, I think just repeating that is still going to be a challenge, just because you do lose what you had at wide receiver, which I think he's losing 70-80% of his targets and yards and all that from last year, when he combined Bolden and Mechie and Williams and Brian Robinson, the running back, who he threw to a lot of the backfield, is also in the draft. So I think the expectations are really going to be based on what happens around him. And if some of those young guys can develop to where they're more reliable, Burton comes in and, is in a different offense than Georgia's. I think that was a big reason why he transferred, is just that Georgia offense is very, and it won a championship, but it was very kind of conservative and based around the tight end. And this Alabama offense is more built around the receivers and throwing downfield a little bit more. So if Burton can kind of flourish in that sort of system, then I think that will help Bryce Young. But I think it's going to be very dependent on who's around him and how quickly they come along.
Will Anderson, obviously, as you mentioned, led the nation in sacks last year. I mean, obviously, in my opinion, should have been a Heisman Trophy finalist with his teammate Bryce Young winning it. How much better can he get in, with another year under his belt? With it? Obviously, he showed every tool he had in the tool shed last year. Yeah,
it's funny. I think somebody asked Saban that yesterday at the Pro Day, and Saban was kind of struggling for an answer, because it's like, how does that guy get better? In Saban's words, he was the most dominating defensive player in college football last year, and I would agree with that. Even though Aiden Hutchinson and some other guys won some awards over him, Will Anderson, I think, was the better player. And I think there's a lot of saltiness in Alabama, around Alabama fans, because of that. But the thing is, like, Will Anderson's makeup, character, just mental-wise, like the perfect Saban player, in the sense that, A, that stuff is going to fuel him. Like, he's so self-motivated. Saban doesn't have to say a word to that guy. And B, he's just the sort of player who does look at it as, where can I get better? Like, what's the 1% that I can improve on? Just a player who I think will really go down in history, in Alabama history, given his first 2 years, not only for what he's done on the field, but just the character. I think he just embodies everything Saban always wants to instill in his players. And sometimes it doesn't work. Like, Saban, he rides guys, and that's when you see those things at the press conferences about him being mad about X, Y, and Z. It's because players aren't responding to his coaching. Will Anderson responds to every single piece of coaching that Nick Saban has ever wanted to give him. And I think it's almost like having another coach in the field. So really just an impressive player to have watched these last couple of years. And again, a guy who, I think NFL wise, you already start to hear it from, the Senior Bowl scouts and people around the NFL that, they're looking at him as much as they were looking at some of the current draft guys on film. And he could probably be top 5, top 3, maybe even the first overall pick this year in a mold of like a Myles Garrett or Jadeveon Clowney.
Michael Rodak, AL.com, our guest here on 3 and Out. Michael, really appreciate the time. Thanks much.
You got it. Thank you.
Michael Rodak, AL.com, covers the Alabama Crimson Tide. Pro Day today, spring practice going on there in Tuscaloosa as well. It's 3 and Out on this Thursday on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Coming up, final hour, John Lastinger, former Dogs quarterback, won an SEC title with Georgia. He's going to join us coming up top of the final hour. Also, we'll hear from Brian Ellis, Georgia Southern's offensive coordinator. Came on earlier with our own Christian Coquel, had a chance to really get into some interesting insight about what this Eagles offense could look like. So looking forward to that. We've got the Final Four coming up this weekend. I know everybody's getting geeked up for Duke, North Carolina, final game potentially of Coach K's career, as if you didn't know that already. Every single round of the tournament, they've been saying that. But how cool is it that it's a rivalry game at the Final Four? Probably the best rivalry in college basketball, hands down, to go to the national championship against either Villanova or Kansas, who are, mainstays in college basketball in their own right.
Yeah, it's a movie script, but it is amazing. Duke Carolina's demanding so much attention that you kind of forget on the other side.
Everybody's talking about it.
Yeah, wow, Villanova and Kansas. I mean, that's a heck of a semifinal on the other side as well. And wouldn't surprise me if one of those teams wins a national title, whether it's Duke or North Carolina that advances, the winner of Villanova, Kansas. But looking forward to that Saturday, going to be awesome. But yeah, the storylines are clearly, obviously there.
NCAA, I mean, they are very, very lucky. They always find a way. Obviously St. Peter's is no longer in it. I mean, Duke, North Carolina, first time ever meeting in the Final Four. Talking about Kansas, Villanova. Yes, either way, college basketball wins again for North Carolina. Do this for more than yourselves this Saturday. Get Duke out
They got to
the
do
way.
it twice. Did it in Cameron. We thought that was it. Now they have to do it again.
Listen. Do people feel sorry for Kirby Smart having to, play against Nick Saban? Get it done, Hubert. Get it done.
I say more pressure. Beating Coach K in the rivalry game in the Final Four, or not losing in Coach K's last game.
Ooh, because
maybe not losing. Maybe.
Is the pressure off though, because you are in the Final Four? I mean, like there's a lot of people talking about, hey, you lose in the first round. We've got more to come. Final hour, John Lastinger around the corner. It's 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop, glad you are with us here on this Thursday. We are efforting John Lastinger, former SEC champion, winning quarterback there for Georgia. And obviously Georgia coming off the national championship, BJ, spring, not though without storylines.
Amazing. I mean, look, there are always storylines and the competition, of course, as you know, is going to be the case when you're at a Georgia, when you're at an Alabama, always going to be there. But when you talk about the quarterback position at Georgia, you have talented guys there. You have Stetson Bennett coming back after a historic season. And I think he's clearly the starter, but look, you're going to have competition at a place like Georgia, and the expectations are going to be that you continue to get better, regardless of what position you play.
I believe we have found John Lastinger as he joins us here on 3 and Out. John, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, appreciate you coming on. Obviously, hey, Georgia coming off the national championship from last season, the defending national championships, but that doesn't mean you don't have questions. What do you make of this Georgia team? Obviously, losing a lot to the National Football League. Is this where you find out how deep you are as a program when you go through a run like Georgia did last year?
Well, no question. I mean, I think that was, obviously a very talented team last year, but they also had a very, they had a lot of depth and, minus a few areas, but, so, lost a lot of quality depth, but you got to hope that some of it's, comes back and on display this year. Of course, it's we're kind of dealing with a new, kind of a new world here with this transfer portal, and it's harder and harder to get quality depth. So, I guess more than anything, you start looking around and who might we lose this year? So, but yeah, I mean, Kirby's done a good job of recruiting, and he's kind of set a standard. So we'll see, how it unfolds in the upcoming year.
John, how do you see this spring for a guy like Stetson Bennett, who, of course, won the national championship, MVP honors in those playoff games, and had a great passer rating? What does he need to do this spring, and what's kind of the next step for him?
Well, it was interesting to read that, and I think Stetson was quoted. He had a long conversation with Coach Smart, and he came away saying there were things that Coach Smart said to me that I liked, and there were things that I didn't like. Well, I think obviously, a kid that started all but 2 games and leads you to a national championship. I mean, the coach has to extend a little respect for him. How you did that, So yeah, I mean that has to, that has to hold water. But at the same time, Kirby's philosophy has always been, hey, best player, I want quality competition from day one of spring practice. So, and there's no secret to it. I mean, they've got, Vandegrift, they've got Carson Beck, they've got they got Gunnar Stockton coming in. They've got a lot of quality depth at quarterback. So, I'm sure he probably reminded Stetson that, you're the guy, but there's some guys behind you that are coming on.
John, when you think about a guy like Stetson Bennett, right? There's nothing really to compare him to. I mean, he talked about the conversation that he had with Kirby Smart and he didn't like what was said. Well, we forget the fact that JT Daniels is not a Georgia Bulldog because of a guy like Stetson Bennett. I mean, you think about the fact that Jamie Newman never, ever even played for Georgia, and it's what Stetson – I know he won the national championship last year, but it's really what he's meant to this team and this offense the last 3 years.
Oh, I agree, Ben. I mean, I think there's an intangible there that those kids really like Stetson Bennett. And I mean, he's just, he's got a little moxie about him that just to make plays and he had some good feet and he made a lot of plays with his legs last year. But I did hear Stetson say he knows he's got to improve. He had some areas, lost yardage plays last year, which I think involved him maybe, not getting rid of the football or trying to make something when we probably should have thrown it away, and he tried to beat somebody around the corner and couldn't do it. We saw that a couple of times in the national championship game. So, I think there's things he can work on for sure, but he does. I think ultimately those kids really rallied around Stetson and really respect him.
And John, why do you think it is? Back not even all that long ago, it wouldn't even be a question. You win a national championship and you're coming back. You're the starting quarterback. Why does it seem like fans don't appreciate winning over, I guess, flashiness and sexiness on the field?
I'm sorry. I'm laughing because I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I scratch my head a little bit too, and I remember again, going back to 1980, we won a national championship. Totally different scenario. I get it, but Buck Bellew, 12 games. We won 12 games. We came back in 81, had a good football team. We beat Tennessee badly in the opener, and then beat California. And then we went on the road to Clemson, and I think we had 7 turnovers, lost the game 13-3. I mean, I think we were in the red zone about 4 or 5 times and just came away with no points. Clemson, of course, goes on to win the national championship. So at the time of that game, we didn't know how good they were. But I remember, I say all that to say the next game we're playing South Carolina at home. South Carolina's not in the conference at the time. They're an independent. But somewhere around the second quarter, I think Buck makes a couple of bad throws or something. I can't remember. But the fans are booing him. And, of course, I'm the backup quarterback. But I'm just sitting there going, you got to be kidding me. These fans are booing Buck Bellew, and he just took us to the national championship. So, I don't know. Maybe the moral of that story is the fans are pretty fickle, and I don't know that they'll ever change. And obviously, in this day and time of social media and everything else, it's probably worse than ever.
What was your mindset, John, during spring practice? I mean, obviously, when you're at a place like Georgia, the competition's always going to be there regardless of the position. How did you kind of approach spring, and could you establish momentum in spring that carried over to the fall?
For me, I would have never played a down in the fall if it had not been for spring practice. Again, a different era, 20 practices back then, and we had all 20 of them were in full pads. Kind of almost a bloodbath. But for me, I mean, again, just in my development, in 1980, in the preseason, I hurt my knee. So I needed the following spring practice, even though I didn't have a very good one, but I had to start working back. The following spring was about, I needed to have a solid spring so that I could be the starting quarterback. I mean, I look back, and for me, I mean, it was completely vital, or I don't think I would have ever set foot on the field in the fall, and I know that's maybe not that, there are probably some guys that are good enough that they can probably go without spring practice. But I mean, I think every chance you get to go on the field and perfect your skills is important, regardless. But for me, golly, it was so important. I would have never played.
And John, I mean, you talk about being the backup quarterback and how strenuous of a position that is, because it's literally every single play. Like, I'm watching the game, but you also watching Buck every single play, because you literally are a play away. And the thing about that is you got to know the offense just as good, if not better than the starter. You got to know the reads just as good, if not better than the starter. Talk about having that sense of readiness to say, look, I know you guys see me maybe with a ball cap on the sideline, helping call plays, but dude, I got to be ready at a drop of a dime.
Well, there's no question about it. And again, we had a much simpler offense, but you're right. You're ready. I mean, the thing I remember coming in as a backup, I can remember coming in that huddle, and there's 10 guys that have been out there for, maybe the first quarter or something, because again, in 81, I got to come in during some quality time. I mean, I was fortunate to get in, and Coach Dooley put me in the game when it mattered, but it was sort of like you felt that respect. I mean, or not respect, but it was me respecting the other 10 guys in the huddle that are already out there. And it's sort of like, okay, I can't let them down. I've got to get acclimated here in a hurry. And to your point, Ben, today, the things that they depend on that quarterback to do, as far as, all of the line checks and everything else, man, you're right. I mean, it would be so tough today to come in as a backup, especially if, like you said, if the starter got hurt and you're in there unexpectedly. But you're right. You really gotta be on your toes.
And John, I said to say, even going back to Stetson, right? We can't get past. I call it the genetics of things. No, he's not 6'5", No, he doesn't have, quote, the big arm. But when you think about the fact that there aren't too many players that went to the same school, they grew up loving and admiring and saying, look, if I ever get a chance, you go back to high school, he was a winner. And you look at the stats. And then the thing was, we act as if he was, just because you welcome back to Georgia doesn't mean you welcome back with open arms. Was Stetson much better than maybe Kirby Smart thought he would be? Take the national championship. You're like, but dude, you making life hard on me because I knew you were good. I didn't know you was this good.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I think the fact that Kirby, once Stetson left and went to junior college and came back, and it, it all unfolded pretty quickly. But I think, with a couple of quarterback transfers, this and the other, all of a sudden he realized that Stetson's pretty valuable and offered him a full scholarship to come back. So I do think that probably speaks volumes at the end of the day, that Kirby knew maybe deep down that, hey, this guy's he's got something to him and we need to get him. But I think as time went on, he just seemed to get, he just had that intangible quality that was needed. I mean, he wasn't always, you had some bad plays here and there, but he just had that ability to pick the team up and move them down the field.
John Lastinger joining us here on 3 and Out. And John, finally, what do you think is going to be the mindset of a team going from the hunter to the hunted? And I say that because obviously for the last, especially 20, 25, 30 years, everybody that's played at Georgia has heard 1980. When are we going to get over the hump? Why can't we get over the hump? When are we going to get there? Why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? To finally do it. I don't think any other school has talked about it in that respect around their program the way it was there with Georgia. Like, we should be winning. Why haven't we done it? It's been 40 years. How do you go from that to being the team that everybody's chasing?
It's a good question. I mean, I do think, I guess, if we look back to last year, even I, who was a member of the 80 team, but I just had no idea how much winning it meant to, the Georgia people. I mean, it kind of took me back a little bit. It took me by surprise to see. I mean, I knew it was big, but apparently some of these people take it pretty serious, I guess. Not that I don't, but I mean, it's just, you're right. I mean, it's, and they open up with Oregon in Atlanta. I mean, the Mercedes-Benz Dome has not been real good to Georgia, in the last 4 or 5 games. So, I mean, they're going to have to be ready in a hurry. And it's it's just, you're going to have some maturity on your football team and guys that are, when you go on the road, that experience is, some of these guys are going to have to grow up in a hurry. No question about it.
John Lastinger, our guest here on 3 and Out. John, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Appreciate it. John Lastinger joining us at Georgia, going through spring practice as the defending national champs. And BJ, I think that's something that it's going to be hard to quantify until you see him play. And how do you keep from having the big exhale? Because again, we've talked to so many former Georgia players over the years, said, oh, the entire time I was there, if I heard 1980 once, I heard it 100 times. And when's this team going to get? And you could tell from the former players how bad they wanted it. As John said, they're guys who played 20, 25 years ago are like, man, it'd really be nice for Georgia to finally bust through because we couldn't do it. We were so close. But how do you switch that mindset from everything that you've done at Georgia has been about getting to the crest of that mountain that you have not been able to do since your parents were in high school, or maybe even before that. And now it's done. It's happened. And I mean, we look at Alabama. I mean, Alabama just lives with it. That's what they do. But I think Georgia's an interesting test case in that regard of how do you go from every fiber of your being was 1980 and why can't we win another national championship? And now you've done it.
It's a great question. And I think John's right. You need to have guys who are experienced on your roster. You need to have leaders on your roster. Georgia has that. And I think you also have a coaching staff. Look, Kirby Smart, they have one, they want another. I mean, they're there, they want to stay there. And you have, Ben, I don't know if the preparation in the offseason is different. Maybe when you have a high profile kind of, I don't know where Oregon's going to be, maybe top 10 type game, but I don't know if that adds to it, maybe. But I think it's a great point when you think about kind of Georgia kind of macro and what this program has accomplished.
Yeah, it is. It is going to be. I don't think it's going to be a daunting task for a team like Georgia because of the guy who was their head coach. I think Kirby Smart was built for this because the one thing that he did learn the most from Nick Saban is not necessarily winning and losing; it's sustainability. Dude, how do we sustain this level? Well, I don't coach any different. Like when people ask, man, what's wrong with Kirby at the end of games when the game is 50 and 40-0? He's still coaching hard because he knows. Look, man, we don't take our foot off the gas. Alabama don't take their foot off the gas. If you watch Nick Saban in the post-game press conference, you cannot tell they won, not based on his move, because I keep the pressure on myself. I keep the pressure on these players. I keep the pressure on these coaches. But I will say that a team like Georgia, like you said, Kevin, it is crazy because everybody gets to breathe. Whether you at Georgia, whether you rooted for them, you're going to go, because everybody had to hear it. You adopt the good, the bad. And I think for a team like Georgia, I mean, I talked to a bunch of, former Georgia guys. They're like, man, I was crying because you get to exercise so many demons. Hey, man, they thought it was going to be JT, thought it was going to be Aaron, thought it was going to be David Green, thought it was going to be DJ Shockley, and so on and so forth. Guy named Stetson. And to me, that's what makes it even crazier. A guy from South Georgia found a way to get out there and get it done. And now he's scratching the claw for his football life because they got these guys with 5 stars next to their name trying to get out there.
And we've got more to come here. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here, 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. We'll hear from Brian Ellis, Georgia Southern offensive coordinator, coming up in just a little bit. And again, a guy whose offense was throwing it, 45, 50 times a game last year, BJ and Ben. So looking forward to hearing from him. But we just talked with John Lastinger about what Georgia's going through in spring. What do you feel is the top priority here for Kirby Smart to get done here over the next couple of weeks to finish up spring?
Yeah, I mean, I think establishing a rotation along the front seven. I mean, look, people are going to talk about the quarterback position, understandably so. People are going to talk about, guys making plays and wide receivers and running backs, and I understand that. But look, Georgia's been one of the, if not the leading program defensively in terms of consistency on that side of the football for a couple of years now. And I think that standard, that expectation remains. You want to control games up front defensively. You want to attack the quarterback. You want to win in the trenches. And you have some just superstars to replace. And the good news is the way you've recruited, you have guys who are 5 stars, guys who are heralded, who are ready to step into those positions. You have some guys coming back too. Nolan Smith, big-time player. Jalen Carter, big-time player. But I think depth is so important in the SEC. I mean, Ben, not only do you have to have starters, you have to have rotations of guys, especially along the defensive line, especially at edge rusher, especially at linebacker. And we've gotten good insight from various guests, but kind of on who's starring there along the front seven. But that's where I look. I know quarterback's always going to be what everybody talks about, but given who you have to replace, given that you've won so many games over all of Kirby Smart's tenure with dominating defensive fronts, dominating defensive lines, I think you want to make sure you know who the next in line is, kind of what your second rotation looks like. And I think that's what you use spring for, right? Is who's on the rise? Who's saying, I need to be on that field? Maybe you're not a starter. Maybe you're a situational guy, but you're making a statement saying, you're going to see me this fall. I'm here in spring. You're going to see me in the fall. So for me, I think it's establishing clarity, establishing rotations along that front seven that has just been so dominant.
For me, it's gonna be establishing a level of confidence in guys like Eric Gilbert. You haven't seen him play football in a while. He's going to be a key contributor. If you are in that tight end meeting room, the 2 starters, Darnell Washington and obviously Brock Bowers, are both out. Can you establish, a level of confidence in that tight end room for guys who might have to be key contributors because they're already dealing with the injury bug? And if you are at the quarterback position, develop a solid number 2. Because sometimes we get caught up in the who. You're supposed to push the starter. You're supposed to push Stetson. But Stetson's not worrying about the guys behind him because he used to be the guy behind. I had to deal with the JT Daniels. I had to deal with Jamie Newman. And the thing about Stetson Bennett is, can you develop that in other players? Man, just because you picked me don't mean I was your first, second, or third choice. Like you said, Kevin, you don't recruit at Georgia. You ask. You want to come to Georgia? All right. And the thing about Stetson is, even with everything he's done, winning the national championships ain't enough. They're looking for a reason. Don't give them a reason. The one thing you hear coaches say all the time, don't give me a reason, because I'm looking for every reason to not play you. And I think the thing about spring is clean slate. I can't live off who I used to be. I can't live off what I've done. I have to look like the best 11 every time I step out there, because if they even make it close, they're gonna go with the young guy who they quote can develop. But I would say, establishing a guy like Eric Gilbert, who is going to be a key contributor, helping that tight end room come along, developing a solid number 2, and ask Stetson, hey man, Stetson, whatever you possess, how can you resonate that through the rest of the team? Because I'm telling you, that type of mentality is the difference in winning and losing. And like you said, BJ, if Stetson was 6'5", this wouldn't even be a question. But because Stetson Bennett, no offense, looks how his name sounds. When you think of Stetson Bennett, you don't think of a national championship quarterback, right? And then he walks out. You go, that's me? He go, yeah. But they call me the mailman. Yeah, and I did not give myself that nickname. Develop a nickname for yourself in the spring and prove that you've come a long way since the fall.
Yeah, again, look, I
think your point's a good one too, though. I mean, it's like that has been the national championship has been the motivational factor for a generation. Yeah. So it's like, now what?
I think that's I think that's what you're going to get. Again, I'm not saying they go from national championship like they lose 7 games, but I think you worry about, hey, the big exhale of we finally did it. Not that it's going to, take a nosedive, but there is some of that where it's like, hey, we finally crested the mountain. What do you do? Because guys came back last year. It's like, I want to win the national championship.
But there's something about being young and naive, right? Now, we know about the history of Georgia. right? This is what we do for a living. If I'm just coming in, if I'm Jordan Davis and all them, I'm saying, well, look, man, I came in around the time I saw Nick Chubb and them go. They just lost. So we just want to be able to say we want the same team that beat them. So you could be establishing something different. If I come into Florida between 2006 and 8, I think that's going to be the norm. You want to be a part of the glory years or the glory year. That way when they say, when did you play? Oh, we won in that when I played. So those older players in between 80 and 2021 can say, you're welcome, you guys. Now it's up to the next group to carry on that. Because like you said, Kevin, now they finna see what it feels like to lose a game. Because when Alabama loses, people lose it because they expect Alabama to win every
I was going to say, what
game.
happens? I mean, John was talking about that opener with Oregon.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think this is going to happen. But, I mean, if you lose that game, all of a sudden it's, well, they won the national championship and they're taking a step back. And that wouldn't be fair. That's one game.
Yeah.
But now you have that Alabama expectation where it's you won one. Okay, defend it. Okay, you're here. Okay, you expect to, maybe there's one or two games you look at and go, but you expect to 10-2 at worst, 11-1 at worst, 12-0, and those expectations are unrelenting. And Georgia, people have talked for a long time. Is Georgia modeled after Alabama? Nick Saban, Kirby Smart. Is Georgia the new Alabama? Well, they have that national championship. What happens next?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first game is interesting. I mean, it's Oregon. I think Oregon, obviously, they're losing several guys to the National Football League as well, but you have a coaching change in Dan Lanning. I mean, again, I don't care how talented you are. It's Dan Lanning's first game as the head coach. I mean, I think there's going to be some vulnerabilities there because we see guys in that first. I mean, Kirby, a lot of guys. You get that first head coaching job, and we talk about it all the time. There's a big difference in the guy on the headset looking up from on high and the guy that's down on the sideline with the headset, and everybody's going, "Did you just call that?" When my offensive, I don't care if your offensive coordinator call it. You're the head coach. Did you just call that? Well, the defense, no, you're the head coach. You got to be worried about time. I think that's a lot of throwing a guy and be like, well, he's going to beat Georgia. I think that's an interesting game where Oregon's good, but I don't think Dan Lanning's first game, they're going to be ready to knock off the beast that is Georgia. We got more to come here. It's 3 and Out. We'll hear from Brian Ellis, offensive coordinator at Georgia Southern, when we return. Should expect to see a wide open offense there in Statesboro. It's 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop, glad you're making us a part of your day. And of course, a lot of change happening around college football, and certainly there in Statesboro. Clay Helton coming on to the scene and taking over the program there at Georgia Southern University. Earlier today, our own Christian Gokel, he had a chance to sit down with Brian Ellis, offensive coordinator who comes in out of Western Kentucky, high-flying offense, and takes over that Georgia Southern offense, which is going to look vastly different, and talk to me about what it's like now finally being able to get back out on the field.
football coach. How important is it to you after you wrap up spring to look up in the stands and see a full stadium when you're playing that spring game on April 23rd?
Well, I'll tell you this. In this game, this job that we do, it's about the players, man. It's about the kids. And if those kids get to run out of that tunnel and see their stadium full, it changes their entire attitude, their entire work ethic for that day. The vibe of the whole practice will just shoot through the roof. It's really cool as a player to run out of there and see a bunch of people that are excited about watching you play and to go out there and put a show on for them. You know, at the end of the day, as football players, they're entertainers. That's what they're there to do. They're there to entertain their people. And, you know, that's what, to be able to run out of that tunnel and see that would be really, really cool for those kids.
Again, Georgia Southern offensive coordinator Brian Ellis, kind enough to take some time with us here during the middle of spring practice. Coach, we appreciate the time, man. I look forward to talking to you as we get closer to the season and as you guys go through this process, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank y'all. Hail Southern.
That's Brian Ellis, Georgia Southern offensive coordinator, talking to our own Christian Gokel. And man, what do you expect, BJ, quickly from Georgia Southern as a guy who comes from Western Kentucky, where they threw the football, they put up yards, they put up points, and as he said, it's going to be different than what Georgia Southern has done. And he said, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think they're going to try to establish balance. I think that's the goal of any offense, to try to be balanced, to try to be unpredictable. I think they're going to open it up a little bit. I think you're going to try to have more perimeter production, but I think the goal is to be a balanced, productive offense.
If you already got an established run game and you can and bring that balance through the air, I think that's what you do. You don't try to just go, we're just going to air it out. That works when it works, but when it doesn't, defense got to make sure they got a lot of water because they're going to be back out on the field. You just want to make sure you play complimentary football.
And we've got more to come here. It is 3 and Out on a Thursday afternoon all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here, 3 and Out on this Thursday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Hawks coming up tonight against the Cavs. The Hawks with a chance to move to within 2 games of Cleveland with a win tonight. As I understand, the Hawks win tonight, they can eliminate the Knicks from the playoffs. So another ice tray own of the New York. What? I mean, that's what happened, right?
They're serving up fresh airs.
Ever since they came after him, what's happened?
Yeah, Hawks have been playing great basketball over the last couple of weeks. And I think they're now 2 games over 500.
It took them all season, but they made it. Took them all year. Just stick to their winning ways. Get the Knickerbockers out. I get sick of them.
Also coming up later tonight, we'll have it for you in Savannah, Georgia, and Florida on the baseball diamond, starting a 3-game set. Ben,
I'm gonna go for them, boy. You know who I'm pulling for. Judd Fabian, Derek Fabian. Y'all know what it is. Go out there and make it happen, Captain.
So Georgia then?
Yeah, of course. I'm from Georgia. I'm not going. You know how it goes.
But this should be a good matchup. Both teams in the top 20, I believe, or Georgia's like 23. Florida's,
I
think,
7 or 8
something.
SEC baseball teams ranked, too.
Yeah. Half the league is in the top 20 and the top 25. They're in the SEC, and you've got an 8th one ranked 27th. So it's no joke when you show up on a Thursday, Friday night. You got to get it done in the SEC. We'll see you tomorrow, Friday afternoon, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.